The Mesopotamian marshland, also known as the region of Al-Ahwar, is a region that lies within southern Iraq and a portion of southwestern Iran. The marshland of southern Iraq and Iran is known for its unique landscape, which consists of flooded grasslands, which are a result of the mixing of the Tigris and Euphrates rivers. During the 1980s and 1990s, the swamp-like wetlands of southern Iraq became the center of a guerrilla rebellion against the Saddam Hussain regime. During the Iran-Iraq War, the Al-Ahwar region became the front line of the war as it lies between the border of Iraq and Iran. The Saddam regime was hated by the people of the marshlands because Saddam had oppressed the people for decades. Saddam would pollute the region with mines and completely disregard the safety of the Arab tribes living in the marshes. The Al-Ahwar Rebellion began when an Iraqi soldier from the Al-Ahwar region defected from his post and took refuge in the territory of his tribe. Abdul Karim al-Muhammadawi was an Iraqi soldier who was forced to join the Iraqi army and fight on the front lines against Iran. In 1982, after killing his army commander, he defected from the military and fled to the marshlands of southern Iraq. Abdul Karim al-Muhammadawi led a massive guerrilla war against the Saddam regime in the marshes and became one of the most fierce opponents of the Saddam regime. Due to his efforts against the Saddam regime, he was given the nickname of Amir al-Ahwar, which means Prince of the Marshes. Abdul Karim al-Muhammadawi would attack Iraqi military checkpoints and hide in the marshes. Soon after this rebellion began, more and more Arab tribes in the Ahwar region began to join the resistance movement. The marshes became a safe haven for resistance fighters and became a center for resistance against the oppressive Saddam regime. The difficult terrain of the marshes made it perfect for insurgent activity. The tribal rebels of the marshes inflicted heavy losses on Saddam Hussein and his army. After the end of the Iran-Iraq War in 1988, Saddam focused his efforts on crushing the Al-Ahwar Rebellion. However, direct confrontation with the rebels proved to be a failure, as the environment of the marshes was difficult to penetrate. The resistance grew more, and people from cities such as Baghdad and Basra fled to the marshlands to join the resistance. Many prominent tribal leaders and Islamic scholars joined the Al-Ahwar resistance. Tribal leaders such as Sayyid Abu Khalid, Sayyid Hamza al-Musawi, Abu Ahrar al-Asadi, Isa Haydar al-Yasiri, Abu Jasim al-Abadi, Abu Jalal al-Mansuri, and Abu Ammar al-Hujaymi declared war against the Saddam regime. These tribal leaders helped establish an effective network of resistance in the marshes. They would smuggle weapons into the marshland and conduct coordinated attacks on Iraqi military checkpoints and soldiers. In the year 1991, after the Gulf War, a massive revolt erupted in cities such as Baghdad, Najaf, and Karbala. However, this rebellion was brutally crushed by Saddam, who used indiscriminate bombing and massacres. After this rebellion was crushed, many religious leaders and former Iraqi soldiers fled to the marshlands in the south. Therefore, the insurgency in the marshes continued. Because of the difficult terrain of the Al-Ahwar marshland region, Saddam would not use the same tactics. Therefore, the rebellion continued in the south and lasted for 2 more years. Saddam became extremely frustrated with the situation and resorted to using unthinkable tactics. In 1993, Saddam resorted to draining the water of the marshland. Saddam drained 90% of the water in the marshlands and discharged the water into a man-made canal. Saddam also contaminated the water with toxic chemicals and poisoned the water supply of the marsh tribes. Without the ability to practice their traditional economic and social activities, which relied on their environment, the majority of the marsh Arab community was displaced. 400,000 people were forced to flee their homes. By the end of the year 2000, only 10% of the water in the marshlands remained. The drainage of the marshes enabled Saddam's army to move inside the marshes. The government began burning and bulldozing villages, confiscating land, forcibly removing inhabitants, and taking hostages. Saddam denied marsh Arabs medical treatment, bombed villages, burnt houses, killed thousands of religious and tribal leaders, and littered the water with mines. Only small patches of the marshland remained.
بويا والفا أريده مرجع بعد